One of the biggest myths and misconceptions that causes a lot of frustration in our fitness culture is this idea that you should be able to perpetually lose body fat from start to finish in one linear format. But of course, that's not reality. That's not what happens. People come to me all the time. They're like, Matt, I've been eating clean. I've been working out like crazy and it was working for a while, but now I'm in a plateau. What have I done wrong? But the fact is there are 3 compounding variables that make it impossible for you to endlessly lose body fat, regardless of how hard you work and regardless of how clean and strict your diet is. Now, of course, losing body fat is about getting ourselves into a negative calorie balance. We have more energy going out of our body than coming into it. And you can do this with either cutting back on your caloric intake through dietary intervention, or you can increase your caloric expenditure through ramping up your physical activity. Both of those have their pros and cons. I always like to think of diet as like caloric defense and movement is like caloric offense. And they usually work best in conjunction with one another. The problem is that neither of which can put you in a permanent calorie deficit for all the weight and the body fat that you want to lose. When you start eating less, you can certainly make a lot of headway with that, especially if you're cutting back on luxury calories, things like a lot of excess processed foods, liquid calories, eating when you're not really that hungry, eating things that aren't satisfying your nutritional needs and stuff. So cutting back that stuff can certainly put a dent in your caloric intake and even improve your health to a large degree. The challenge, though, is your body's always going to say, all right, these are the calories I got to work with. I'm going to adapt and compensate so that you regain your homeostatic calorie balance, therefore preventing fat loss with whatever dietary intervention you've implemented. Same thing happens with exercise too. If you're going from sedentary into more activity, then yeah, you can really ramp up your caloric expenditure. But just like with cutting back on what you're eating, exercising and being more physical activity carries an exponential increase in cost to body, mind, and lifestyle while having diminishing rate of returns. That's because your body will always kind of compensate a little bit here and there. And it's, again, not so much about how many calories you're burning or how many calories you're eating, but whether or not you're in that calorie deficit. So this is why when you say, okay, I'm going to do a ton of cardio, you can move the needle at first, but eventually it plateaus. Or you start eating less or eating more clean and whatever, eventually a plateau. In your body's mind, that is a success, and that is not only unavoidable, it is entirely necessary for your long-term progress. Any big changes in your body, especially with fat loss, they're like climbing Mount Everest. You can't just go up it in one shot. Climbers for high altitude mountaineering understand you climb for a bit, and then you stop, and you have to acclimate to the new environment. And then once your body has adapted and adjusted and become more comfortable there, then you can keep going up. And it's exactly the same thing, especially if you're trying to make some big changes happen. You're going to make so much progress, you're either going to purposely put yourself in a plateau or your body's going to do it for you. And then you have to acclimate in order to get used to those new circumstances before you can continue. But when we see the plateau as a bad thing and we're like, oh no, I need to adopt a new extreme diet or workout program. Yes, you're giving your body new instructions that it needs to constantly acclimate to, but it's perpetual stress on body, mind, and lifestyle. You're not really telling your body anything useful or new. Usually you're just giving it the same instructions in a different format. And you're not allowing yourself to get used to the new level. It's like if you're climbing that mountain and you never acclimate, you can never get above a certain altitude. So here's the practical takeaways that you can have from this. Number 1, make sure your diet is focused first and foremost on nutrition and satisfying your appetites, not on fat loss. So making sure you're eating wholesome foods, satisfying your need for hunger, metabolic support, nutritional support, yes, even a little bit of hedonic support. So that way your diet is first and foremost healthy. And then when you have the opportunities and the motivation to decrease your caloric intake, then you can cut back on calories to a degree, putting yourself potentially in a negative calorie balance for a length of time. Same thing with physical activity. I always tell people never work out purely to burn calories. Work out for athleticism, work out for recreation, work out to feel good and be strong and healthy and all these other sorts of things. Calorie burn is just the side benefit that you have from that sort of thing. So be physically active most every day for those reasons. Then when you're like, okay, time to really put the screws into creating a negative calorie deficit, then you can just simply ramp up what you're already doing a little bit more. Your body's more adequate to handle it. It's going to be a lot less stress on body, mind, and lifestyle. And you're going to be able to get more out of what you're doing physically, including an increase in calorie burn. And then finally, recognize that you're going to make progress for only so long as far as losing body fat. And it's probably going to be a lot slower than what you would like. And that's perfectly fine. But once the stress starts to mount on body, mind, and lifestyle, once you start to notice that the food cravings are really taking over, energy is really dipping down, or all these negative consequences, then you go back to your default healthy and diet and activity levels, keeping you more into a maintenance. You're learning how to maintain your fat loss, maintaining the lean body, and then regrouping and acclimating so that way you can give it another shot further down the road. But the bottom line is you just can't endlessly eat less or move more for a perpetual negative calorie balance. It's supposed to be temporary, you're supposed to plateau, and it's supposed to feel like it's taking longer than it is, because that's how we do it in a fun, healthy, and effective way. Catch you in the next video. Be fit, live free.